Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army was discovered in China, and it is a massive piece of funerary art that is thought to be one of the most massive archaeological finds of modern times. It truly is incredible, and it's something that's been attracting tourists from all over the world since its discovery. But for those who did the discovering, well, things haven't really been going so well. In 1974, there were 7 farmers who happened to stumble upon this huge discovery, and you would think that this would come with some kind of a reward, but instead things have been going terribly for the farmers. Soon after the discovery, the government claimed their farmland. After this, their homes were demolished in order to make way for the exhibition halls and gift shops that were to come. They didn't just get nothing for this discovery, they ended up losing because of it. This is exactly why many people believe that perhaps with the unearthing of this huge piece, they also dug up some sort of curse that was buried long ago. In our number 9 spot today, we have the water jug. Okay, estate sales, they're weird places, there are weird things, there's some quirky items, but this has got to be one of the strangest on a whole bunch of different levels. It's a decorative drinking jug, but it's being held in a miniature cart that's being pulled by a porcelain donkey. I cannot make this item up, nor could I make up the fact that this kitschy item is also apparently haunted. The seller of this item spoke about how he grew up with the item around, as it was always displayed at his grandmother's house and she always kept it full of water. This was all fine and dandy until after she passed away, when he was taking care of the estate and he bumped into it. How was the jug filled with water when no one was there to fill it? He thought that perhaps it was just old leftover water and he just ignored it, but the same thing seemed to happen repeatedly. And it wasn't even like the water level was staying the same, it would increase seemingly all on its own. The seller decided that this was not an item that they wanted to hold on to and decided it would be best to pass on to someone who is ready to take on this very mysterious and very strange object. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Destiny Ring. Rudolph Valentino was an incredibly famous silent film star before he passed away at the incredibly young age of just 31 years old, and there are many out there who believe his untimely death was caused by the Destiny Ring. This ring is one that he picked up from a California jeweler, but before purchasing it there were warnings of the stories which claimed the ring was cursed, but Rudolph decided to just go ahead with the purchase anyway. It is said after this ring came into his possession, his luck really began to turn. The movies he starred in started to do poorly, some even flopping, and his career really began to struggle. From there he fell incredibly ill, and when he passed away he was wearing this cursed ring. From there, after his death, his lover ended up receiving the ring, but once it was in her possession she too fell extremely ill, and she decided to give the ring away. All the owners after that were reported to have died in strange ways or under mysterious circumstances, which has led the ring to now being placed in a bank vault all locked up so that it hopefully can never cause harm to anyone ever again. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Bassano vase. The Bassano vase was cast from silver in the 15th century and was apparently a wedding present for a bride who lived in a small village in Napoli. On the wedding night, however, the bride was found dying on the floor with her hands wrapped around the vase. With her last breaths, she vowed to have her revenge, and at this point it became unclear whether the vase was already cursed, or perhaps if this may be what caused the curse in the first place. As time went on, the vase was handed from person to person within her family, and with each new owner came another mysterious death. Because of this, the family decided to hide the vase away in some sort of a secret location, and this worked for a while until the vase was unearthed once more in 1988. The vase also contained a piece of paper from the family that warned, "Beware, this vase brings death." Well, of course, whoever found the vase did not listen, and instead they sold it once again. The first buyer, who is said to have been a pharmacist, owned the vase for 3 months before passing away under mysterious circumstances. Then there was a 37-year-old surgeon who died after having the vase for 2 months. After this was the archaeologist, who only made it 3 months with the vase in his possession, and at this point you get where this is going. Right now we don't know exactly where the vase ended up, but I'm just hoping it's somewhere deep underground or in space or something else far, far away from us all. In our number 6 spot today, we have the mask. This metal mask resembles the face of a monkey. It's definitely already a little strange looking, but the story behind it is even more interesting. According to the seller of this item, they explained that they acquired the mask in Thailand, but not before they experienced a supernatural battle where a witch used spells to bind the spirit of a jinn to the mask, trapping it. Since then, the mask is said to be full of supernatural powers, some of which could bring benefits, but it takes a whole pile of work. This mask is said to have the ability to fend off vampires as well as potentially bring riches to its owner, but it needs some things in return. The entity in the mask needs regular offerings of food and drink, and it also requires the owner to meditate in front of it for 20 minutes 3 times a day. Talk about high maintenance. If a person refuses to do these things while in possession of the mask, it is said that a cruel fate awaits them. I mean, what do you expect when you anger an ancient spirit? In our number 5 spot today, we have the cursed chest. The story of this cursed chest starts off with a horrible person named Jeremiah Graham, who is said to have been making preparations for his firstborn son. Part of these preparations was having a hand-carved chest made, and the person he got to make this chest was a man who he had enslaved named Remus. When Remus finished the chest, Jeremiah was not satisfied, so he began to harm Remus, who would unfortunately later pass away from his injuries. The other people who lived and worked in the home were rightfully horrified and angry about this situation, so they decided to sprinkle dried owl blood inside of the drawers, all while placing a curse on the chest. It is said that the curse brought tragedy to anyone who put their clothes inside of it, and apparently it is a curse that is working with a vengeance, as it is said that this chest and the curse are responsible for taking the lives of at least 16 people. In our number 4 spot today, we have the goblet. This is an item that was found in a museum, but it was a museum of specifically haunted things, so I feel like it still counts. This goblet is said to have been used for rituals of necromancy, which poses a few questions for me personally. What did they put in it and presumably drink out of it? Holy water? Wine? Blood? All of the above? Who knows? Either way, here's the real kicker. This goblet was of course for sale on eBay, because why not? And the seller was claiming that it has an amazing energy to it. Okay, what kind of energy? Well, they said that some find it strangely positive, but that many perceive it as negative and malignant. Alright. Don't think I'll be bidding on that auction, to be honest. In our number 3 spot today, we have the beds. Back in 1986, couple Deborah and Alan Tallman moved into a new home with their children in Wisconsin. The following year, they bought a second-hand set of bunk beds for their children for $100, but as it would turn out, they bought much more than they had originally bargained for. When they brought the bunk beds into their home, they clearly must have brought something else along with it. It started when they began to see strange shapes in their home, and they would hear disembodied voices that, despite how hard they tried, they could not find the source of. They found themselves fighting with clocks and radios that turned on and off by themselves. They would find furniture that had moved seemingly all by itself, and sometimes they'd even see an apparition of an old woman. In the end, they not only threw the beds in a landfill, but they also moved from the home just to be safe. As far as we know, the beds remained in the landfill, but who's to say for sure? In our number 2 spot today, we have the Belcourt Castle chairs. Belcourt Castle is located in Newport, Rhode Island, and it is a former summer cottage. Construction on the cottage started in 1891, with it being completed in 1894, and inside there is a ballroom. This ballroom is important because it is said that it holds a group of haunted chairs. People who have visited the castle have reported a ton of strange happenings regarding this specific set of chairs. The reports include things like feeling chills racing up and down their spines, or feeling a strange sensation in a shift of energy while standing near the chairs, and some people have even explained how they have been pushed out of the chairs by an invisible force. I feel like just hearing stories might be enough to explain the energy shift some people are feeling, but actually being pushed out of a chair by some sort of invisible force would be absolutely terrifying. In our number 1 spot today, we have doorknobs. To be honest, I wasn't expecting to ever hear about haunted doorknobs, but this might just be a thing that really does exist. These doorknobs were listed on eBay, and the seller explained that they were once the knobs seen on the doors at an asylum, which truly lands on the list of creepiest places in the world. Considering everything that is said to have gone on at places like these, it truly doesn't surprise me one bit. We're looking at you, lobotomies and other horrific mental health treatments of the past. These doorknobs must have quite literally opened the door to some terrifying things that I'm sure many of us would prefer to not even think about. According to the eBay listing, the asylum that they came from after it was abandoned is said to have had strange whispers whispers, occurrences, and horrifying noises coming from it. This is all to say that maybe that trip to Home Depot is better than buying antique just this one time. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the statue. This statue, or bust, is said to have been made by a man named William who enjoyed making these sorts of things out of clay. Unfortunately, however, legend goes that this specific statue was made on the same day that William was crushed to death during a tragic work accident. A co-worker of his who showed up to work the following day found that this statue was still there, so he took it home with him. For a while, he kept the statue hidden, but when he took it out to display it, things started to go awry. It started with just a heavy and uninviting feeling, but soon things escalated. He began to hear doors slamming on their own, only to go and find them wide open. If anything was placed next to the statue, the next time he would find it completely shattered, and at one point he found the statue in a position that he never placed it in. He finally had the last straw when he saw a dark, shadowy figure, or a sort of mist, moving around near where he placed the statue. After this, he was so spooked he had a friend list the item for him on eBay because he just simply needed to get rid of it. In our number 9 spot today, we have Uluru Rock. Uluru Rock is a large sandstone formation that is located in the southern part of the Northern Territory in Australia. It is sometimes known as Ayers Rock, but regardless of what it is called, this area is sacred for the people indigenous to the land. This is part of the reason that those who visit the rock are asked to not take anything from the site. Despite this, people of course still choose to smuggle pieces of the rock out of the area and home with them. Other than the bad karma and just in general feeling like a bad person for doing the one thing you're asked not to do, as it turns out, this rock may hold a more sinister secret. Those who have stolen rocks from the Uluru have experienced things like extremely bad luck, severe illness, and sometimes even the death of those they love. The curse these rocks hold is seemingly so bad that it is very common for the company that runs the tours of the formation to receive letters of apology that contain the stolen rocks. Apparently these letters come so often, at least one a day is expected. Maybe this is a weird coincidence, but it seems to be happening a little too often for that to be the explanation. In our number 8 spot today, we have the beds. Back in 1986, couple Deborah and Alan Tallman moved into a new home with their children in Wisconsin. The following year, they bought a second-hand set of bunk beds for their kids for $100, but as it would turn out, they bought much more than they had originally bargained for. When they brought the bunk beds into their home, they clearly must have brought something else along with it. It started when they began to see strange shapes in their home, and they would hear disembodied voices that, despite how hard they tried, they could not find the source of. They found themselves fighting with clocks and radios that turned on by themselves. They would find furniture that had moved seemingly all by itself, and sometimes they'd even see an apparition of an old woman. In the end, they not only threw the beds in the landfill, but they also moved from the home just to be safe. As far as we know, the beds remained in the landfill, but who's to say for sure? In our number 7 spot today, we have the Crying Children paintings. These paintings were a series created by an Italian painter who was known as Giovanni Bregolin, but his name was really Bruno Amarillo. Bruno was born in Venice in 1911 and fought in World War II, which ended up being the inspiration for a lot of his paintings. During his time in the war, he saw a lot of suffering, and this is where he got the idea for the series of Crying Children paintings. After the paintings were sold, there began to be reports of fires in all of the places where the paintings were held. While this could have just been a strange coincidence, the weirdest part is that the paintings always remained intact while everything else around them was burned. This quickly became the most talked about thing and was on the front of every newspaper, and the paintings quickly gained the nickname Diablo. It caused the paintings to end up being replicated and mass-produced, but none of the replicas hold quite the same powers as the originals. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Goddess statue. The Goddess of Death statue is also known as the Woman from the Lem. This artifact was made out of limestone, and it was created somewhere around 3500 BC and was found in Cyprus in 1878. Over the years, it has belonged to many different families who all have been ruined and dismantled by death. After the first 6 years of ownership, all 7 members of the first family died. It then moved on to a second owner, and after 4 years, death began to come to him and his family as well. There was then a long period where it was unclaimed, but once the third family finally got a hold of it, several members of that family began to die as well. The third family ended up turning it over to the Royal Scottish Museum because it is of course an ancient relic, but legend goes that the museum curator who initially took care of it died within a year of receiving it. So maybe the curse lives on. In our number 5 spot today, we have the goblet. This is an item that was found in a museum, but it was a museum of specifically haunted things, so I feel like it still counts. This goblet is said to have been used for rituals of necromancy, which poses a few questions for me personally. What did they put in it and presumably drink out of it? Holy water? Wine? Blood? All the above? Who knows? Either way, here's the real kicker. This goblet was of course for sale on eBay because why not? And the seller was claiming that it has an amazing energy to it. Okay. What kind of energy? Well, they said that some find it strangely positive, but that many perceive it as negative and malignant. Alright. Don't think I'll be bidding on that auction, to be perfectly honest. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Surrey ghost car. On December 11th, 2002, a call came into the Surrey Police Department. The caller reported that they had just seen a car lose control and run off the road and then presumably crash. It was of course an emergency call, but not necessarily anything out of the ordinary. That was until authorities got to the location and realized that they couldn't find any evidence of a crash. They kept searching and ended up finding a maroon colored car that was nose down in a ditch nearby. But this car was covered in so much undergrowth that it must have been here for months. This meant that somehow this crash went undetected for 5 months, and worst of all, so did the body that lay nearby. Using dental records, they were able to identify the body as a man who had been wanted for robbery since July of that year. It is said that the sighting of the car leaving the road was a ghostly replay of the events that had taken place 5 months prior. In our number 3 spot today, we have doorknobs. To be honest, I wasn't expecting to ever hear about haunted doorknobs, but this might just be a thing that really does exist. These doorknobs were listed on eBay, and the seller explained that they were once the knobs seen on the doors at an asylum, which truly lands on the list of creepiest places in the world. Considering everything that is said to have gone on at places like these, it truly doesn't surprise me one bit. We're looking at you, lobotomies and other horrific mental health treatments of the past. These doorknobs must have quite literally opened the door to some terrifying things that I'm sure many of us would prefer to not even think about. According to the eBay listing, the asylum that they came from after it was abandoned is said to have had strange whispers, occurrences, and horrifying noises coming from it. This is all to say that maybe that trip to Home Depot is better than buying antique. Just this one time. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Nightmare Doll. Haunted dolls like Annabelle and even Robert get a lot of hype, but they certainly aren't the only dolls with stories of curses and hauntings behind them. This Nightmare Doll was listed for sale on eBay, and according to the seller, the doll is possessed by a Dybbuk, which is a malicious demon or entity. The seller of the doll is actually someone who apparently specializes in selling these sort of paranormal items that no one wants anymore. The seller explained that the owner of the doll bought it at an antique shop, and while they did tell her about what the doll held, she didn't know what the word meant, so she took it anyways. Soon after purchasing it, she realized that anyone who came into contact with the doll was then plagued with terrifying nightmares and occurrences of these sort of shadow people. She only could handle this all for a couple of months before she handed the doll over for it to be sold and moved far, far away from her. In our number 1 spot today, we have the carving. This is a carving that was sold on eBay in 2013, which the sellers claimed had been in their family for over 60 years. It was originally found by the seller's grandparents in the attic of their home. This was back in the 1950s, and when it was found, the grandparents asked the original owners of the home where it had come from. They explained that it was a gift from a prisoner who is said to have carved it. The seller explained in their post that, quote, anyone who comes in contact with it seems to feel strange or creeped out by it. The statue mostly didn't cause too much harm. That was until the seller tried to put it on display in their home. Once it was taken out of an old box and placed in a cabinet, strange occurrences began. They said that, quote, I began to experience the television turning off and on, lights coming on in rooms no one was in, the kids' toys coming on in the middle of the night in their room at 3 a.m. At the end of the day, despite the troubles this person had with the statue, they still ended up selling it for $85. Not a bad deal. Get rid of a demon and gain some cash for it. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Screaming Skull. Bettiscombe Manor is often referred to as the House of the Screaming Skull thanks to a legend that dates back to the 19th century. Legend goes that the owner of the manor at the time of this legend had a slave who fell seriously ill. As he lay dying, he had one last request, which was to have his body returned to his home. It's a pretty fair request and truly the least this family could have done for the man. In fact, he even said that he would never rest until his body was returned home. Of course, the owner of the manor was a huge piece of work who refused, citing that this would make the burial far too expensive, and instead he ended up having the body buried on the grounds of the manor. It is said that after this, the village in which the manor resides was plagued with ghostly screams and cries coming from the cemetery. Apparently, at the manor, they began experiencing things like the windows rattling and the doors slamming, seemingly of their own accord. Listen, I wish that this man could have just rested at home like he was supposed to be, but considering how awful these people were, I am so happy that he made sure everyone and their families were haunted because of their greedy behavior. In the end, it is said that the hauntings got so bad they ended up exhuming the body and bringing it into the manor. From here, it is said that the body somehow disappeared, all except for the skull, which still resides in the manor. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Iceman. Okay, so this is not an object because it's a mummy, but I still had to include him on this list because the story is so crazy. The mummy of Otzi, who is also referred to as the Iceman, was found in 1991 in the Otzal Alps in Italy. It is believed that Otzi lived around 3000 BC and his body became mummified and preserved because of the glacier that surrounded him post-mortem. While this is an incredibly interesting discovery, the finding of Otzi may have come in a package with an old curse just waiting to be released. Here's the thing, the people who helped with the discovery of Otzi are all dying under mysterious circumstances. I mean, we are currently at person number 7 within 1 year, so that's very suspicious. When molecular archaeologist Tom Loy was writing a book about Otzi, he passed away from a blood-related condition that he was diagnosed with shortly after becoming involved with the Iceman. The German tourist Helmut Simon, who discovered the mummy, felt his death while hiking in the same spot he saw Otzi. Dieter Warnick, who was the head of the mountain rescue team that was assigned to finding the mummy, died of a heart attack at just age 45, just an hour after Simon's funeral. To avoid this becoming an hour-long list, I'll stop here, but that is just half of those who seemingly fell victim to the curse of the Iceman. I don't know, maybe disturbing a man who's been in the same spot for 53 centuries wasn't the best idea anyone has ever had. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Atlantis Ring. The Atlantis Ring was originally made of clay and it was found in 1860 in the Valley of the Kings in a tomb of an Egyptian high priest. It was then passed on to Howard Carter, who kept it until he passed away in 1939. The ring was believed to be at least 5,000 years old and it had geometric symbols carved into it that were unlike anything known in Egypt. Here's where the story gets a little weirder though. Howard is one of the people who discovered King Tut's tomb, and he would later tell people that he was wearing a talisman when the tomb was opened, aka the Atlantis Ring. He claimed that the ring gave him protection, and that just might be true because he is the only member of the team who didn't die a mysterious death after the opening of the tomb. Even those who visited shortly after the opening of the tomb were subjected to this curse, with a total of 18 victims in the end. Howard said that this ring is what protected him against whatever evil forces were at play. So I guess maybe the Atlantis Ring is more like an anti-cursed object? I don't know, but what I do know is that it is all quite curious. There are now replicas that are sold, but I'm sure none hold the power of the real deal. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Bassano vase. The Bassano vase was cast from silver in the 15th century and was apparently a wedding present for a bride who lived in a small village in Napoli. On the wedding night, however, the bride was found dying on the floor with her hands wrapped around the vase. With her last breaths, she vowed to have her revenge, and at this point it became unclear whether the vase was already cursed or perhaps if this may be what caused the curse in the first place. As time went on, the vase was handed from person to person within her family, and with each new owner came a mysterious death. Because of this, the family decided to hide the vase away in some sort of secret location, and this worked for a while until the vase was unearthed once more in 1988. The vase also contained a piece of paper from the family that warned, "Beware, this vase brings death." Well, of course, whoever found this vase did not listen, and instead they sold the vase once again. The first buyer, who is said to have been a pharmacist, owned the vase for 3 months before passing away under mysterious circumstances. Then there was the 37-year-old surgeon who died after having the vase for 2 months. After this was the archaeologist who only made it 3 months with this vase in his possession, and at this point, you get where this is going. At this point, we don't know exactly where this vase ended up, but I'm hoping it's somewhere deep underground, or in space, or somewhere else far, far away from us all. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Belcourt Castle chairs. Belcourt Castle is located in Newport, Rhode Island, and it is a former summer cottage. Construction on the cottage started in 1891, with it being completed in 1894, and inside there is a ballroom. This ballroom is important because it is said that it holds a group of haunted chairs. People who have visited the castle have reported a ton of strange happenings regarding this specific set of chairs. The reports include things like feeling chills racing up and down their spines, or feeling a strange sensation and a shift of energy while standing near the chairs, and some people have even explained how they have been pushed out of the chairs by an invisible force. I feel like just hearing these stories might be enough to explain the energy shift some people are feeling, but actually being pushed out of a chair by some sort of invisible force would be absolutely terrifying. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Koh-i-Noor diamond. This diamond has an extremely controversial history, and it is the source of a lot of debate, but regardless of the ongoing conversations over who really owns it, we are here to talk about the curse that this stone is said to hold. The diamond dates back thousands of years, and its curse is said to only affect men. It is said that the jewel can bring about great wealth, but it can also bring great misfortune as well to those who own it. Folklore states that, quote, "He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all its misfortunes. Only God or women can wear it with impunity." Throughout the history of the diamond, it was passed among many people and rulers who all fought bloody battles while in possession of it. Every prince who had it is said to have ultimately either lost their power or their life while in possession of it as well. Part of the controversy of the diamond is how it ended up in the hands of the British royal family during colonization in the 1800s. Ever since then, it has only been worn by female monarchs, including Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Destiny Ring. Rudolph Valentino was an incredibly famous silent film star before he passed away at the super young age of just 31 years old, and there are many out there who believe his untimely death was caused by the Destiny Ring. This ring is one that he picked up from a California jeweler. Before purchasing it, there were warnings of the stories which claimed that this ring was cursed, but Rudolph decided to go ahead with the purchase anyway. It is said after this ring came into his possession, his luck began to turn. The movies he starred in started to do poorly, some even flopping, and his career began to struggle. From there, he fell incredibly ill, and when he passed away, he was wearing this cursed ring. From there, after his death, his lover ended up receiving the ring, but once it was in her possession, she too fell extremely ill, and she decided to give the ring away. All the owners after that were reported to have died in strange ways or under mysterious circumstances, which has led to the ring now being placed in a bank vault, all locked up so that it hopefully can never cause harm to anyone again. In our number 3 spot today, we have The Orphan's Story. This is a book that was originally written in the early 1600s, but it didn't end up getting published until 2018. The Orphan's Story is about a 14-year-old Spanish boy who heads to the Americas. You know, a classic kind of coming-of-age feel-good story, right? Well, not exactly, and that is exactly the reason why it took so long for it to be published. While the curse in this book doesn't come from the story itself, there is something dark lurking in those pages. The book's publisher, Belinda Palacios, who worked on the book for 2 years, explained that throughout those years, she was often warned of the cursed book and how every publisher who had tried to work on it before ended up passing away in a mysterious way before they could finish the book. When Belinda looked into this, it turned out to be true. Her research showed that those who tried to edit the book before either found themselves in horrible accidents or with strange illnesses. Luckily, Belinda made it through the process unscathed, so let's hope that maybe the curse has been lifted. Either way, it's probably one I'll personally stay away from. In our number 2 spot today, we have the van. Dr. Kevorkian was a man who's called an angel of death. If you haven't heard of these people before, they are doctors who like to euthanize patients, normally against their will. So this piece of work was doing just that, and one of his most important tools was his large white van. Yeah, huge red flag already. The van later went on to have the nickname Deathmobile, and it made headlines again when it found its way into a pawn shop. The reason the person who had previously had it didn't want it anymore is because they claimed that there were strange occurrences that began happening once it was in their possession. This story led to paranormal investigator and ghost hunter Zach Baggin purchasing it. Apparently, people who enter the van immediately feel just overwhelming sadness, and they also feel like there are unseen eyes that are watching them at all times. In our number 1 spot today, we have the cursed chest. The story of this cursed chest starts off with a horrible person named Jeremiah Graham, who is said to have been making preparations for his firstborn son. Part of these preparations was having a hand-carved chest made, and the person he got to make this chest was a man who he had enslaved named Remus. When Remus finished the chest, Jeremiah was not satisfied, so he began began to harm Ramus, who would unfortunately later pass away from his injuries. The other people who lived and worked in the home were rightfully horrified and angry about this situation, so they decided to sprinkle dried owl blood inside of the drawers, all while placing a curse on the chest. It is said that the curse brought tragedy to anyone who put their clothes inside of it, and apparently it is a curse that is working with a vengeance, as it is said that this chest and the curse are responsible for taking the lives of at least 16 people. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Anna Baker's wedding dress. In 1836, a man named Elias Baker purchased a mansion in Altoona, Pennsylvania and moved his small family in. Elias's oldest daughter was named Anna, and when she fell in love with a steel worker, things took a dark turn. Anna's father didn't want her dating this man, but she kept doing it in secret. The story goes that Anna and the man planned a secret wedding and were going to elope. Unfortunately, Elias found out and freaked out. He apparently purchased this steel mill that the man worked for and then forced him to have to move to an entirely different city so as to prevent him from being able to continue seeing Anna. Anna, of course, was furious with her father, and I'm sure this was only made worse by his decision to offer other men to her, to which she of course declined because that's just weird. Anna instead locked herself in a room with her wedding dress that she never got to wear. Anna unfortunately never married after that and spent the rest of her life being terribly upset about the whole incident. After her death, it is said that her anger and despair ended up going into the wedding dress. Members of the Baker family reported seeing the dress in different places around the house, despite no one moving it themselves. Some have even reported seeing Anna's spirit dressed in the gown around the house as well. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Golden Eagle. This car was a 1964 Dodge 330 limited edition, and it has been blamed for the death of around 14 people, which, how do we even let it get that out of control? It is said that the car started out as a police car originally, but there were 3 officers assigned to this car who all ended up taking their lives and other people's lives in horrible ways. Not in the car, but still super weird that this all seemed to happen after they had been using the cars for work. Because of this strange correlation, it ended up being sold off to another man. Throughout the 80s and 90s, it is said that because of the rumored cursed car, it became a point of interest for vandals. People began vandalizing the car only to meet their own untimely fates, which were all met in strange ways. For example, it was said that one vandal died from being struck by lightning. It is said that the curse is so strong that one person decided to merely touch the car, and it sent him into madness as he went on to commit atrocious crimes after that I cannot even detail here on YouTube. The car now belongs to Wendy Allen, who supposedly collects and decorates haunted cars for a living, so it seems as though it's finally found its home, far, far, far away from anyone else. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Blarney Stone. For hundreds of years, the Blarney Stone has resided within Blarney Castle, which is near Cork, Ireland. The stone is a piece of limestone, and legend says that those who give the stone a smooch will then be given the gift of the gab. This little smooch can bestow the power of being able to talk your way out of any situation, which would be incredibly useful, but there are those who always try to indulge in too much of a good thing. The issues start when you attempt to take a piece of the stone, no matter how small, away from its home. Those who don't follow the rules and take the stone end up being cursed with bad luck. Every year the castle receives parcels from greedy tourists who tried their luck at stealing portions of the stone. These parcels are returned with the intention of lifting the curse of misfortune. It is said that once the stone is returned, the curse will be lifted, which is most definitely good news. So I guess the moral of this curse, however, is to not be greedy and to just follow the rules. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army was discovered in China, and it is a massive piece of funerary art that is thought to be one of the most massive archaeological finds of modern times. It truly is incredible, and it's something that's been attracting tourists from all over the world since its discovery, but for those who did the discovering, well, things haven't been going so well. In 1974, there were 7 farmers who happened to stumble upon this huge discovery, and you would think that this would come with some kind of a reward, but instead, things have been going terribly for them. Soon after the discovery, the government claimed their farmland. After this, their homes were demolished in order to make way for the exhibition halls and gift shops that were to come. They didn't just get nothing for the discovery, they ended up losing because of it. This is exactly why many people believe that perhaps with the unearthing of this huge huge piece of art, they also dug up some sort of curse that was buried long ago. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Myrtle's Plantation Mirror. Myrtle's Plantation is located in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and it is said to be one of the most haunted places in the entire world, which seems like that would make a lot of sense. One of the reasons for this spooky reputation is because of a mirror that resides inside of it. It is said that this mirror holds the spirit of Sarah Woodruff and 2 of her children. Legend goes that a woman named Chloe was a slave at the plantation, and she drew up a sort of plan to get revenge on the owners of it, Sarah and her husband. Chloe baked a cake full of poison for them, but in the end, the rest of the family, except for the husband, ended up consuming the poisonous cake. When they passed away, it is said that their spirits went into the only mirror that was uncovered at the time, thus this haunted mirror was born. People who have since visited the plantation have claimed to see the family in the reflection, as well as handprints on the glass despite the continuous polishing. In our number 5 spot today, we have tap shoes. These tap shoes were listed on eBay and they are cute as can be. They're black shiny ones with a red bow to tie them together. They look recital ready, but apparently they haven't been used in a long time, and the reason behind it all is chilling. Legend goes that these shoes once belonged to a little girl who loved to dance. At some point, the shoes were retired and she would go on to meet an untimely fate. The shoes ended up being placed with other old memento items and put in a closet and sort of forgotten about. The shoes, as well as the other items with it, ended up being part of an estate sale years later, but the spirit of the person who passed may have already had some other ideas about what they wanted to happen to the shoes. The seller of the shoes reported that there were mysterious happenings surrounding the shoes as they were clearing out their late aunt's house, the person who was the owner of the shoes. They explained that there were mysterious knocking sounds coming from inside of the closet, almost as if the shoes were tapping by themselves. Also, as it turns out, the house had quite a gruesome history that included killings, so if not the aunt's ghost, perhaps there's another one lurking somewhere in there. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Dark Mirror. This mirror now resides with the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult, but prior to that, this mirror was received from the owner who had purchased it from a psychic fair. It is believed that this mirror was created sometime around the 1820s or 30s, and it is actually quite beautiful to look at despite the sinister things it seems to hold. The owner who gave it to the museum explained that every time they peered into the mirror, they saw these extremely upsetting things while looking into the dark mirror's reflection. The museum has said that since they added the mirror to their collection, there have been guests who have also reported the same kind of things. Guests have claimed to see things reflected back at them like sightings of their own corpse. In our number 3 spot today, we have the water jug. Okay, estate sales are weird places. There are weird things there, some quirky items, but this has got to be one of the strangest on a whole bunch of different levels. It's a decorative drinking jug, but it's being held in a miniature cart that's being pulled by a porcelain donkey. I truly could not make that item up, nor could I make up the fact that this kitschy item is also apparently haunted. The seller of this item spoke about how he grew up with the item around as it was always displayed at his grandmother's house and that she always kept it full of water. This was all fine and dandy until after she passed away and he was taking care of the estate and he bumped into it. How was this jug filled with water when no one was there to fill it? He thought that perhaps it was just old leftover water and he just ignored it, but the same thing seemed to happen repeatedly. And it wasn't even like the water level was staying the same. It would increase, seemingly all on its own. The seller decided that this was not an item that they wanted to hold on to and decided it would be best to pass on to someone who is ready to take on this mysterious, strange object. In our number 2 spot today, we have Letta the doll. Before we really dive into this one, can we just acknowledge how all cursed dolls look like they would be a cursed doll? I mean, like Annabelle, Robert, they both totally look like dolls that would be holding a secret, scary curse. And this doll, Letta, is just another one that we can add to that list. Letta is a doll that is said to be around 200 years old and is extremely cursed. This doll is called Letta for short, as its full name is Letta Me Out. Really clever. The doll was originally found underneath a house, which definitely feels like the origin story of a haunted doll. The creepy discovery came 47 years ago. Letta still lives with the man who found him. The hauntings of Letta include things like the doll walking around on its own at night, the owners finding objects around the house that have been moved into odd places. Some people have even seen Letta move right in front of their own eyes, and the owner also reports finding little doll-sized scuff marks around the home as well. It is said said that this doll once belonged to someone who passed away while holding it, thus their spirit became trapped inside of the doll. Apparently one day in an interview about Letta, as the interviewer was asking questions about the person who passed, the doll began to move in her lap. Yeah, no thank you. Letta has his own Instagram and Facebook page in case you want to hear more about all of the creepiness surrounding this cursed doll. In our number 1 spot today we have the mask. This metal mask resembles the face of a monkey. It's definitely already a little strange looking, but the story is even more interesting. According to the seller of this item, they explained that they acquired this mask in Thailand, but not before they experienced a supernatural battle where a witch used spells to bind the spirit of a jinn to the mask, trapping it in. Since then, the mask is said to be full of supernatural powers, some of which could bring benefits, but it takes a whole pile of work. This mask is said to have the ability to fend off vampires as well as potentially bring riches to its owner, but it needs some things in return. The entity in the mask needs regular offerings of food and drink, and it also requires the owner to meditate in front of it for 20 minutes 3 times a day. Talk about high maintenance. If a person refuses to do these things while in possession of the mask, it is said that a cruel fate awaits them. I mean, what do you expect when you anger an ancient spirit?
In our number 10 spot, we have the Donald Trump mask. It's probably cursed because along with how funny it is, it's also terrifying. Imagine seeing someone wear this walk by you. If they had, a similar build to him and they wore like a turtleneck, then I would probs think it was him. The extremely orange face with the white eyes is too much. Too funny and terrifying at the same time. In our number 9 spot, we have a zombie mug. Merch like this makes me terrified but also excited. This mug is super creepy though, and most definitely cursed. This is a mug that when heated, a zombie appears in the cup with blood on its hands. The zombie's face is quite chilling that it actually feels like there's some kind of spirit attached to it. Anyone else? The zombie is also like pretty bloody too, no thanks. Definitely stay away from this product unless you like dealing with dark spirits, then by all means go for it. In our number 8 spot, we have the faceless carving. This is an item of a mother and daughter hugging that's a carving made of willow tree. The only thing is, the mother and daughter do not have faces. Look, I love my mom. She's one of my best friends, and I love cheesy lovey-dovey products to show that you love someone, but this isn't the one. I don't know, man. Seeing this, I got the instant creeps, and I personally think this item might be haunted. There's so much detail in the figurine. Why leave the faces blank? From what I've gathered, there are a lot of items similar to this made from a brand called Willow Tree, and honestly, I think their intention seems to be to make some sort of comforting merch. At least that's what they say in their marketing. But personally, there's something spooky about these figurines without faces. Faceless items just feel too horror movie for me. Quite possibly haunted and therefore cursed. In our number 7 spot, we have the creepy pen holder. Okay, so this item is just creepy. It's a pen holder with a little red man figurine lying on the floor, and the hole where you put your pen in is right in its heart. Who the heck thought of this? What was their thought process? Who were they imagining this guy to be? And why don't they have better friends to say, hey man, maybe don't make such a low vibe product? The world is low vibe enough these days. This item is not cursed in your typical ghostly way, but it definitely is just low vibes to begin with, so anyone who buys it is sure to continue the low vibe train and sit in a bit of a crappy headspace. In our number 6 spot, we have the LED mask. Look, I'm conflicted. On one hand, this is kinda cool to look at first, if you're into LEDs. On the other, it's very creepy, and also it can't be good to wear LEDs so close to your face, can it? I don't know. I don't know much about electricity and lights, but something makes me nervous about wearing lights on my face, and I'm concerned that no one even asked the seller about that. The mask itself is also the face of something out of a nightmare, so there's also that. I could see a John Wayne Gacy of this time using this mask while plotting his next kill, and that just gives me the shivers, not gonna lie. With its creepiness and the fact that it's probably not very safe to wear LEDs on your face, at least for long, I'm gonna go ahead and say that this product product may curse you with some kind of low vibe situation in your future if bought. In our number 5 spot, we have a kitty salt and pepper holder. Look, I'm a cat and dog person. I love them both. I sway a little more on the dog side, but whatever, they tend to give you more love. Anyways, my point is that I love all cat and dog merch, but this is terrifying. This is a cat salt and pepper shaker that could have been made cute and adorable, but it looks like it may possess you. First off, the cat is dark gray with shades of black. Could they have not made him white or orange or give him a cute yellow collar? Anyways, it's really the face that's terrifying. Couldn't they have modeled the face off of the cat from Shrek? It's so cute with the big eyes. No, they made the cat look like it will probably eat you while you're sleeping. In our number 4 spot, we have the toilet mug. I'm throwing this one on the list because it's clearly cursed to make you want to throw up every time you have your morning cup of tea. This is a toilet tea mug. I can't. Just why? If you are someone watching this and you have bought this item, please explain in the comment section below. It's just so beyond gross. It's definitely a funny gift, but also a waste because it's so gross that I just can't imagine anyone drinking from it and not feeling like they must now run to the real toilet. Anyways, if anything, I want to argue that it's cursed with not being used much and definitely will make people feel ill. In our number 3 spot, we have the Let's Summon Demons shirt. Let's not. Maybe let's go outside and play in the grass under the sun, or make chalk drawings on the pavement, or beat Pokemon Gold again like it's 2002, and do everything but summon demons, okay? Why is there a shirt that is encouraging people to summon demons? Clearly the creator that made it was being possessed by demons himself or herself, and the demons gathered together to plan how they can possess more people, and alas, came upon the plan of encouraging people to summon them through a t-shirt with cute humans holding hands while standing on a giant pentagram. In our number 2 spot, we have a satanic ring. Whether you're religious or not, I'm sure you can look at this product and feel uneasy. It's a gold-plated stainless steel ring that has a devil skeleton with a cross on its forehead. It's extremely dark. Anything to do with the devil just makes me uneasy, but honestly, there's nothing about this product that feels positive. Even as a Halloween ring, I feel like it's just too much. The vibe around it is quite low, and I'm pretty convinced that anyone that buys it will be doomed to feeling low while wearing it. Could be just me, but I believe that we should be careful with what we put on us as objects carry energy, and even if you got someone to cleanse an object, something like this, you'll always know that its maker had low vibe intentions when creating it, so therefore it could always possibly be low vibes. In our number 1 spot, we have the Furby doll. Guys, stay away from this doll. I had to put this in first because I had so many creepy situations that happened with this doll that I'm convinced it's possessed. Also, it's not just me. Literally, this was trending a few years ago where people told their possessed Furby doll experiences, and I instantly felt more creeped out as that totally confirmed my own experiences. Literally, I would be talking to my mom and the doll would say something that would be in response to what we were talking about. Or it would just, make noise or blink when the battery wasn't in it. I'm telling ya, this item is not to be played with. If you have a haunted Furby story, oh my gosh, please share in the comment section below. We want to hear it.
Starting us off at number 10 is the watch. Now this one genuinely freaked me out because everything was just way too coincidental, but let me know if you guys actually believe it or not. So on the listing for this watch, the seller said the watch was owned by a 24-year-old woman called Julie. The watch was a gift from her dad and he gave it to her before he died, saying whenever she wears it, he'll always be looking over her. And she used to basically wear it every single day no matter what she was doing. Like, that kind of accessory you only really take off when you're showering? Like that. Either way, one night she left the watch on her nightstand while working and decided to go for a cheeky midnight jog. But she never came back from her jog. Julie ended up getting abducted and killed by a delusional person at around 11:29 p.m. and the watch has actually been stuck on that time since that night. Its batteries are fine, it's not broken, it just doesn't move its hands. Julie's friend took the watch to a medium who confirmed that Julie truly knows for a fact that if she had been wearing the watch, she would have been safe, and so she just refuses to leave it now. The seller shared that whenever they hold the watch, there's sometimes a really abrupt temperature drop, and at one point they felt freezing in 80-degree weather. And apparently this whole backstory didn't really hold much appeal since it was bought for a whopping $17.5. Talk about cheap. So coming in at number 9 is Joey. Yeah, so this seller literally listed this little boy called Joey on eBay for $100, and I'm like, talk about self-worth and the legality and the humaneness of that. No, I'm kidding, Joey isn't a little boy, it's actually just a vintage teddy bear. Plot twist. The seller wrote that his grandma visited an antique store in San Diego as a teenager and bought this creepy teddy bear. She took it home, named it Joey, and then very quickly started having really horrific nightmares. She'd go to bed with Joey on her bedstand facing one direction, and when she woke up, he'd be facing a completely different direction. And last time I checked, inanimate bears can't move on their own. How does that work? Other instances, she'd leave the room and come back, and the bear would have one of his arms in the air, and despite how freaky it was, she never told her parents about it because she didn't want them to throw Joey away. Which honestly, you know, like, fair enough, you start getting attached to creepy cursed bears over time, it happens, can't help it. Either way, time passed, and on the grandma's 90th birthday, she told the seller to take some of her things, including Joey. He put the bear in his room and soon after started having really bad nightmares. We're getting a sense of deja vu here, and he started feeling this constant sensation of being watched all the time. His body parts would move randomly, and at a certain point the seller's kids started crying and begging him to get rid of the bear. He decided to store him in their garage, and then items in the garage would start falling from their shelves and moving out of place. And for all those reasons, the seller refused to have this cursed bear in his house any longer and listed it on eBay, where it was bought for a whopping $180. At number 8 we have Eve. Now Eve is listed on eBay by a Las Vegas-based seller, Angel Fire Lights, for $1,666. I love how they could have easily just kept the price at $666, which would have been a lot more creepy, but they were like, you know, nah, I want the extra grand. Either way, Eve is a cursed doll who's said to have a murderous spirit inside of her. The doll itself is extremely pale, she has tied up red hair, and is wearing a very fancy greyish white dress. And she sort of looks old-timey, like she's from the early 1900s. I could be overthinking, but she really does look like that. Anyway, the story goes that human Eve's lover gave her this doll, but then she went on to murder her lover and sister after they ended up falling in love with each other. She then took her own life, and her spirit was doomed to curse this doll forever. Scorned women, you guys, you can't mess with us, honestly. The seller said she can hear broken-hearted cries during the night, and that Eve causes the worst migraines. I don't know why you'd include that, since that's just not a great selling point, but sure, like, no one's gonna pay nearly $2 grand for a migraine. I certainly won't. Filling our number 7 slot is the lamb. This one is a lamb plush toy listed on eBay by the seller The Gallows of Salem 66. The plush toy itself looks like a really run-down lamb toy you'd find that a kid lost or dropped in a bunch of dirt. According to the seller, the toy is haunted and cursed by a little girl called Cindy who owned it beforehand. Cindy was holding the toy when she died in a hit and run, and so now you can hear a weird distorted voice coming from the lamb at certain times. It sounds like a broken record that keeps glitching and skipping, but it's definitely there. The seller is actually Cindy's mum, and she called an investigator in to test the toy, and they concluded Cindy is inside it. So naturally, as the good mum that she is, she decides to sell the vessel that's carrying her daughter on eBay for $15. No returns or exchanges. Honestly, I really hope my mum would sell me for more than $15. I'm worth 25 at least. Come on, people. This is a joke. Now at number 6 are the tap shoes, but I mean one of them is broken, so it's not even a pair of tap shoes, it's like 1.5. Either way, listed by haunted_hearts, the shoes were actually found by someone who was clearing out their aunt's estate after she died. They found them tucked away in a nursery closet with a bunch of other Victorian style toys and clothes. Whoever found them said they believed they were cursed since they heard a lot of knocking from inside the closet before they found the shoes. So I mean, if you do end up buying them, it's likely it'll wake you up in the middle of the night just tapping away. The estate they were found in was said to be home to many ghosts, including the spirits of a 9-year-old called Lisa who died from sepsis and a woman who murdered her baby there. Now I don't know if any of these events cursed the shoes or they were doomed from the very beginning, but they're screwed up just saying. But I guess if that's what you're looking for, then you have the right product, to be fair. Coming in at number 5 is the photo. Listed by the asylum attic, the historic daguerreotype is apparently cursed by a Victorian man named Martin. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically the first type of photographic process that was invented. So just imagine black and white, old creepy men photographed looking like they have something stuck up their ass. And that's exactly what it is. The seller said they randomly found it hidden in the attic of their house and kind of entertained by it would bring it out for their guests to look at. The more they did that, the more guests started noticing certain smells that would appear along with the photo. The smell of roses, the scent of cigar smoke, even the musty smell of smoke from a fire. The seller became so curious about the photo that they bought a Ouija board and spoke to the spirit inside. They claimed Martin was quite talkative and playful but would suddenly become closed off at times. Sounds a bit moody to me. Either way, the seller liked Martin so much they moved the painting from the attic and hung it in their living room. After that, items in their house literally started disappearing, and not just moving around, which was happening too. No, just straight up disappearing. They'd hear footsteps in the living room when they were trying to sleep, and these things just started happening more and more that they ended up wanting to sell it. And there we have it. Out you go, Martin, you play too much. At number 4 is the juice container. This one is probably the cutest thing on the list. It's like a little deer carrying a moonshine bottle, but it's obviously not for moonshine, it's for juice or water, and there are a bunch of little cups attached at the bottom. All around, very cute. Anyway, the item was listed by Griffey911NY, and they described it as a donkey juice container, when, like, it is not a donkey from any angle, it's so clearly a deer. The thing looks like exactly like Bambi. Either way, the listing said it randomly fills up with water. The seller inherited it years ago from their grandma, and it's been showing him weird shit all his life. Now, originally, he just assumed his grandma would fill it with water every day, but after she died, he realized it was still happening and no one else was doing it. He's always been skeptical of the jug. I mean, he doesn't find the occurrence scary or anything, he just doesn't get how it happens or why it happens. He has a strong feeling the jug had a big backstory involving it being cursed, since his grandma was really into the occult, but she never trusted him enough to actually tell him the story. Either way, if that's cursed, that's a very good curse to be, like free water for life, unless it's from the baths of hell, then it's not so good. Filling our number 3 slot are the gentleman's shoes. So dolls are up there and so are shoes apparently. So the seller said he found these black leather shoes at a local thrift store, and when he got home, he realized the shoes had been engraved with the previous owner's name. Curious, the seller decided to search up the name and found the man's obituary. The more he read, the more he found out, and he realized the man had been reported missing and his murdered body was found a month later. Now, here's where it gets weird. Not that that wasn't weird, because it was. As soon as he finished reading the article, his computer randomly shut itself off. Weird, but he brushed it off. But then that night, he had a massive crash in his kitchen and found one of his blackboards just on the floor. Thinking it was a freak accident, he just went back to bed. The next day, he woke up and his son told him the electricity in his room had gone out for 30 minutes, even though the rest of the house was completely fine. He even had 2 blessed mother statues and they were facing different directions even though no one had moved them. He opened his fridge one day and 5 things fell out, even though they were always pushed to the back and never at the edge. So after all that, he was like, these shoes are going? Because my life was completely fine before I bought them? So he ended up listing them on eBay and they were sold for $125. These are the second cursed shoes on the list now. Ain't nobody got time for that. Now at number 2 is the baby doll. I think it's just a given that half the items in the world that are haunted or cursed are dolls. I don't know why it's a thing, it just is, and I know you guys know that as well. Either way, the listing shows this baby spirit doll that has no hair, big haunting blue eyes, and is wearing a white tulle skirt. Like, I don't even think the doll is wearing a shirt at this point. So the arms and feet and head and face, so all exposed skin, basically looks burnt. Its skin is saggy and actually looks like post-burnt skin, and I'm not even joking. Either way, moving on from its creepy appearance, the seller said after they moved into a house dating back to the 20s, they found an old trunk in their basement that had been turned into a toy box ages ago. They took the doll out, and after that point they listed a series of paranormal experiences they had, all because of the doll. The seller's kids were affected the most, so their toys would start moving across the room on their own. Their eldest son started suffering from nightmares every single night and swore he heard footsteps in his room. Their youngest son now can't even sleep alone in his room, and if he does, refuses to do so without a nightlight. And he started talking about an old man and his mother who apparently live in their basement, so it's clear that this kid is seeing ghosts. And those are just the kids' experiences. The seller has heard footsteps and whispers coming from their attic, their front door randomly blows open when no one's there, and to top it all off, their electronic devices and lights suddenly stop working simultaneously and start back up a few minutes later. They ended their ad with, "I'm not responsible for anything that may or may not happen when in possession of this doll." And honestly, that's all the warning I need. I'll take it. Sold. And finally, at number 1 is the jewelry box. It looks like the most antique jewelry box ever. Like, honestly, who needs a jewelry box that big? It's genuinely massive. I could put clothes in there if I tried. Mine's like 3 dainty glass boxes, but anyway, that's relevant. The seller claims the box used to be owned by a lovely young woman who ended up dying in a horrible plane crash. After she died, her mum kept the box and started hearing bizarre noises coming from what used to be her bedroom. The days went by, she kept hearing it, and finally bringing herself to enter her daughter's room again, she went in to see a full body apparition of her daughter screaming in the middle of the room. Now, she couldn't hear anything the daughter was saying but the hum she'd been hearing for the past few days. The current seller used EVPs to see what was really up, and they reported hearing the words "take me home" and "hello." When they used an EMF, the box triggered even higher ratings. So the box is most definitely cursed by the girl's soul, and I hope whoever buys it knows it's like a buy one get one full screaming ghost girl for free package deal. It should say that somewhere, like a little, like in fine print.